It is 8 p.m. in the East, 5 p.m. in the West. Welcome to Talk Center America. I'm Diane Dimond.
Changing the faces of television.
There you hear it from somebody who deals with social media all the time. You cannot believe everything you read. However, I know that you can believe everything you hear from our next guest. This is Jeff. Jeff Gold is a legal analyst with HLN. If you watch the Nancy Grace show or, HLN all day, you see Jeff on talking about the Jodi Arias trial. I'd show you Jodi Arias' picture again, but it's gone all of a sudden. Hi, Jeff. How are you tonight? Oh, Jeff, I've made a mistake here.
Green, I don't know. I have to. Good to talk to you. I have just flown in from Phoenix. As you know, that's why I couldn't get at the top of the hour with you.
That's fine. No problem. We're glad you're here.
This is a huge saga. Started in December. State did its case in the first 3 weeks of January, and from the end of January to almost now, we've been wrapped up in the defense case and a little bit of rebuttal. The state has now rested its rebuttal, and there is a sur-rebuttal, 1 day of sur-rebuttal happening next week, so we're on a couple-day hiatus because the defense sur-rebuttal doctor, another psychologist, couldn't be there till Wednesday. So Judge Sherry Stevens has said that the parties will finish that witness in that 1 day, and they will stay as late as they need to do it. And then they are going to go right in on Thursday to charging the jury. And then after charging the jury, the state will do its closing until the end of the day.
Right.
And then on Friday, the defense will give its closing and leaving a little room at the end of the day for the state's rebuttal. And then the jury will finally get this case.
Unbelievable. This, I covered the Michael Jackson trial long ago, and it started with jury selection in February. And we didn't get the verdict until the middle of June, or the first part of June. This sort of reminds me of that. It's so long. Couldn't the judge have made this a little shorter, or is that just not allowed?
Well, she's been very cautious. It's a death penalty case. It's actually her first death penalty case. She's a former prosecutor. She knows what she's doing, but she's very cautious because we all know that when you have a death penalty case, it will go through appeals for years and years and years, and every little thing will be looked over. Absolutely. So she's been very cautious in that regard. But in terms of time, those viewers that have watched any of it, and we're covering it live on HLN every single day, so it's available to to the multitudes to watch. They will know that court started every day at 10:30 with a lunch break at 12 till 1:30, a break in the afternoon, stopping at 4:30, and no Fridays for most of that time. So that's how we've got it stretched out to where we're at right now.
That seems crazy. I don't want to second guess a judge, of course, but it seems that if the days were a little bit longer, it wouldn't have been such a long trial. But then on the other hand, Jeff, this is really hard testimony to listen to, isn't it?
Well, some of it, some of it is. I mean, it's been amazing because in the middle of the day on network TV, cable network TV, we are hearing about anal sex, oral sex, every kind of sexual fantasy you can imagine.
And plus seeing all those autopsy photographs with his throat slit and almost 30 stab wounds and a gunshot wound to the head. Did you see all that?
Well, of course you do, but that's kind of standard fare in a murder case. What's not standard fare is what, in essence, is pornography in the case. I mean, generally in a criminal case, when you have pornography, it's not the kind of pornography that we see in this case. It's child pornography. It's not really shown very much even to the jury, or naked people because they're dead, like the autopsy. Here, that's not what we had. We have the defendant and the victim taking, pictures of themselves naked on the day of the murder, in sexual poses and extreme sexual poses. I like to say there's a set of Playboy pictures and then a set of hustler pictures. And they're all relevant because they're within hours of the murder. So it's a very unusual case. So I mentioned it when you say it's hard to watch. Well, it was very interesting at some point because you just don't see this in a murder case very often. But then it's become tedious because the same pictures and the same references have gone on and on and on throughout the case. The defense certainly wants to make some hay out of it because the whole defense in this case is that Travis Alexander was a domestic abuser. And the reason they want to say that is under Arizona law, on self-defense if they prove a little bit of evidence that the victim actually was the aggressor. Then the burden shifts to the state, which is unusual for a self-defense.
Oh, that's
The
interesting.
way
Yeah.
in Arizona, and then the state has to disprove that she was the victim of domestic violence. So that's why this case has gone on so long. In fact, I think about 80 days of the defense compared to 15 days of the state.
Now,
very unusual.
At some point, Jeff, doesn't that, I mean, you're a trial attorney, you're a very experienced trial attorney. Doesn't a long process like that, a long, drawn-out defense, however many days it's been, doesn't that actually boomerang on the defense? Doesn't the jury think like, oh, God, please, just shut up?
Well, I mean, let's take it step by step. You know, you have 18 days of the defendant herself being on the stand, 11 on direct. That's crazy. I mean, maybe in a complicated RICO case, you know, but you know, something where there's a conspiracy and documents. And no, she talked for 11 days about every part of her life. And you know what? It was relatively sympathetic. She told all the details of her life. A lot of them were backed up by these texts and emails. It does make Travis look abusive. However, when she got to the murder after 11 days, there was 24 minutes on the stand that she couldn't remember anything. And it really stretched credulity. I said at the time it was like a rubber band. Could the defense stretch this rubber band? And I was buying it. I was buying it. But when she couldn't remember anything at all about the murder, boom.
Well, it was the trauma. It was the trauma and the shock of it all, I guess.
Well,
okay, so let's recap a little bit. And by the way, all the Twitter people out there who are dying to talk to Jeff Gold, he said that he would stay with us a little bit. If you want to Skype in, just go to Skype, to your Skype account, and put in Talk Center America, no spaces, and you may even get a question into Jeff yourself. But Jeff, okay, so here we go. We're going to have one more witness next week. We're going to have the closings of the defense. I'm sorry, the state, then the defense, then the state gets a little rebuttal or whatever they call it, and then does the jury actually get the case next week? I mean, would they start deliberating like on Friday afternoon?
No, technically speaking, if everyone is done on schedule, then the jury will technically get it. But I don't think the certainly not deliberate unless we were done early. It's my understanding they're not going to be sequestered. They just don't do it in Maricopa County, and I don't know if they do it in Arizona, generally speaking. But it's my understanding they're not going to be sequestered. They haven't been sequestered for all these months.
Right.
So I think Monday, the Monday following. So next week we have 3 days of court, big days in court. If you've been watching this trial, this is the finale, the grand finale, where the lawyers get to take all the pieces of the puzzle. They may have been asking questions for 5 months, but what they're doing is looking for little nuggets of gold, and they may not be apparent to you as they're mining for that gold, but now they get to take it and make it into a mosaic that tells their story.
And they put all the pieces together. I mean, that's the thing that people don't understand because they watch these TV dramas.
That's right.
And they don't get to explain as they go along. They get to put facts in, and then the closings bring all that information into the big puzzle. Is that a fair way to explain it?
And the confusing part here is we call them closing arguments. And the reason they're closing arguments is because you're not supposed to argue during the trial, which is, as you mentioned, sometimes you watch a movie and people are arguing in the middle of a trial. That's not the way it really works with a witness. So what happens is they're supposed to get facts and now argue. But in this case, allowed so many leading questions on direct, and it's been argumentative at many, many times. So I think the arguments have been made. But now, each side has almost a day. That's a long time to put together a relatively simple case. And so they should be able to do a pretty good job of painting the picture. It's my understanding, although that's not confirmed to me, but it's my understanding that Kurt Nurmi, there are 2 defense attorneys and 1 prosecutor only, which is unusual. Usually there's a backup. But the defense attorney who will give the closing, Kurt Nurmi, is relatively slow-winded, I will say.
I noticed that, yes.
Talk slowly.
Ooh, yes.
So I think he can take up a day on.
Oh, my.
And the prosecutor is just the opposite. He wakes you up no matter who it is. Even if it's his own witness, he wakes you up.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Muriel is calling in. Do you have a question for Jeff?
Yeah. I do. I want to know why there's no footprints after that hallway.
Well, there was a lot of blood, a pool of blood in the hallway where some suspect his throat was slashed. But Jodi also drugged the body back to the shower, is the supposition, and washed the body and herself. She took a shower in the shower where Travis was eventually found.
Oh my!
Yeah, so there was a lot of after action there. Clothes were put in a washing machine. Of course, the camera was thrown in there. So I suspect that Jodi Arias did some cleaning.
So, Amy, what is that? Does that answer your question, Amy?
What do you think, Amy?
There's no footprints in that blood.
Here's what the big debate is. Let's see if you have some viewers that want to talk about this. The big debate, and it's a big one, whether or not she shot him first or last. Now, she actually testified that she shot him first, and then everything else was in a big blur, so all the other things happened later. The medical examiner testified that no, that is unlikely because there wasn't enough blood splatter, there wasn't enough blood, so when she shot him, he was already, the throat had already been slashed, etc. Now, why this makes a difference is because it's ironic in the sense that the first detective on the case gave an interview to 48 Hours where he said, oh, gunshot first. And the reason why a detective would say that is because it shows premeditation if they say you stole your dad's or grandfather's gun and then you brought it there and then you shot first. It makes sense to a detective. In fact, it makes sense to a lot of people. But the ME says the science doesn't support it. Well, how does that affect the state's case of premeditation if she's supposed to have brought the gun to shoot him, but she doesn't? She stabs him first.
Yeah, but she says she got the gun from the closet, and
that's true.
I know, it's just crazy, which is why this trial has taken so long. Okay, now, Jeff, stand by again because we got Renee. She's calling in from D.C., and I think Renee is a Jeff follower. Am I right, Renee?
I have followed Jeff. Yes, I've also done some things for HLN, so we have that in common.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What are you thinking about this trial and the way it's stoked by social media? And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it too much information?
Well, I wanted to go back to something you were talking about earlier and talk about sort of the underbelly of social media, some of the things we don't see. One of the experts in this case for the defense, La Violette, I mean, she was literally attacked, assaulted personally by social media. And I've been doing the defense side of this case for the last few months. You should
now,
see.
can I just wait, Renee? Let's just explain to people. La Violette was a psychological expert who testified about Jodi Arias' state of mind and why she may have felt threatened enough to do this. Am I right?
She's a domestic violence expert
right.
that the defense called.
Okay.
And she underwent a vicious personal assault, social media included. And what I wanted to comment on is those of us who have taken the defense position and maybe have been a little more vocal than others, social media has not been kind to us either. I don't know if Jeff has experienced that, but I certainly have.
Well,
so,
I know exactly what you're talking about because when I cover Casey Anthony, Jerry Sandusky, any one of those trials, and if you're on the defendant's side, you hate all the media because they're reporting the stuff that you don't believe to be true. But the personal attacks are something else. I know, it's really vicious.
It is, and this expert really, she was threatened. She ended up going to the hospital under severe stress, and so there's a whole other side of this. There were death threats on the defense attorneys in this case.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
Maybe Jeff has more insight on that, but very serious. I mean, this social media has an underbelly, undercurrent within it that is very dangerous, very scary.
It sure does. Stay with me, Renee. Jeff, you know, when we were, when I was covering, I can't remember, I don't think that you were there, but when I was covering the Casey Anthony trial, oh my gosh, the day of the verdict, there were people out there with placards that said, kill her, kill her, kill the jurors. I mean, it was really frightening, and they all gathered because they got together on social media and knew where to meet, right outside the courtroom. It was scary.
Right. We've actually talked about that, on air. I think there is something about a mother that brings out some instincts in in the viewers that are different than this kind of a case. I don't suspect that's going to happen here. In a case where, like even as to the death of Lacey Peterson, again, a pregnant woman, there's just some kind of feelings that are just, you know, innate in people that come out. But, you know, I do think I met Alice LaViolette. I had an occasion to speak to her, and in the course of this trial, and I used to blog about her being Ann Alice. I think she was a nice lady. I think that she meant well. I think, unfortunately, what she did in this, she was not really an expert witness. I think that's the first problem, is that she gives seminars, she speaks, she's testified in 6 cases, but she's not an expert witness, and that really didn't do her too well in the end. She testified against the position that many domestic violence experts thought was the truth, which is that Jodi was not the victim of domestic violence, and that Alice LaViolette's testimony would set back the cause of battered women for many, many years. I mean, you know, we've come to a place that, you know, women used to be treated as chattel. You could beat them, you could kick them. In some places in the world, you still can kill them.
And some places in America, you can still do that too. Now, Renee, let's bring Renee in here on this, because Renee, I mean, I don't want to disparage any experts that take the stand, because they do so with knowledge that I don't have. But what do you say about that? I mean, did she set back women who would otherwise come forward?
Look, I think as an attorney, I've been doing this a long time, like Jeff, I was a prosecutor, and I think she went well beyond her intended purpose, if you will. And whether, in terms of her testimony, her opinions, her speculative comments, I do think she went well beyond the limited scope of really what she could testify to.
Now, Renee, why did she do that? Was that because the defense attorney took her there and the judge allowed it, or did she just do that on her own?
I think it's a combination of things, honestly. I do think that the judge allowed more than she probably should have, but look, the state didn't object to many of these questions, and for good reason, because they were able to do what they wanted to do with her on cross-examination and make some very strong points that certainly helped the state. But going back to something, one of the problems I feel, and I don't know if Jeff agrees, is in social media with somebody like LaViolette, people that don't understand the legal nuances, social media can be a vicious tool, and there's no filters with it. And it can be very dangerous, and people are subject to all kinds of personal attacks. So for somebody like us who have an understanding of the law and what
and the way it works,
does,
now,
I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about those that really don't understand that and are emotionally reacting using social media.
And you know, I think too, there's a lot to be said, Renee, about the fact that people read other people's tweets and Twitters and Facebooks, and then they say, yeah, that's what I believe too, when in fact it's not in any basis of fact. And I'll give you a quick example. I covered the Michael Jackson case for, I don't know, 152 years or something. Seems like that long. And so now all of his youngest fans who live in Germany and Ireland and Italy and places that never saw the trial or never saw the coverage here hate my guts, and they want me dead. And so I feel a kinship with dear Alice there, because it can be frightening. Have you talked to her specifically about that, Renee?
No, I've never met her. I've covered the trial from afar here in D.C.
I see.
But I defer to Jeff. I mean, she seems like a very personal, very nice, well-intended woman. Certainly takes her job very seriously and is very experienced. But you know, just tying in your social media theme, again, no filters, no boundaries, really.
Oh, yeah. You know what, we're coming up on the top of the hour here, Renee, so let me just ask you, because I've already asked Jeff, what do you think is going to happen now? We're going to get a verdict when? I mean, the closings are going to be done by Friday, next Friday, 1 week from today.
That is something none of us who know law could even predict, but I agree with Jeff. I'm sure they'll get the case on Monday.
I wanted to make you commit. Oh, well. All right. Well, listen, Renee, thank you very much. Let's go back to Jeff. Jeff, a final thought from you on this topic as we come to the top of the hour here. How long do you think deliberations will take?
I'm just going to take a wild guess, 3 to 5 days. I think that I think that 3 days is required for such a long trial, at minimum. Respect, I mean, is minimum. And then 5 days just because it's the end of the week and maybe they want to get the hell out of there.
There have been many verdicts on a Friday afternoon, haven't there?
I mean, but on the other hand, you just don't know. And this gunshot first, any kind of confusion in a jury where you can't say what happened. Look, what happened in Casey Anthony is that the state couldn't prove the cause of death. We don't have that here, but we do have some confusion as to what actually happened. And we don't really know how it happened.
Yeah, and you have stuff that the jurors can argue about. That's
right.
What's going to take a long time.
Right.
Jeff Gold, I know you just got off a plane from Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you so much. You plopped down at your house. You called us right away. I owe you one, my friend. Thanks for coming on. And we hope all of you come back for our next Talk Center America. The best way to figure out when we'll be here next is to just stay in touch with our website. That's TalkCenterAmerica.com. I'm your host, Diane Dimond. Thanks for being with us. Boy, what a show tonight. Join us again next time. Thanks for being with us.